The EarthQuaker device's Plumes. What is this pedal? What is it not? So something unique was happening with this pedal that I was noticing, and what was happening is that I was seeing a lot of them used for very inexpensive. Now, there's two things that you don't generally expect from EarthQuaker devices. In my experience, a lot of players who play EarthQuaker devices pedals tend to hang on to them, and they also don't tend to be exceptionally cheap. So that kind of perked my interest a little bit. Okay, what's going on with this pedal? And so I looked it up, and the pervasive term with this is it's a tube screamer. It's some type of tube screamer. It's inspired by a tube screamer. It's an offshoot of a tube screamer. Okay, that seems reasonable enough. There's a lot of pedal companies that do their own version of a tube screamer. Maybe this is like an EarthQuaker devices kind of take on getting an inspired by tube screamer out there. So I managed to get my hands on one of them. And when I plugged it in, it was not at all what I expected. I would not use the word tube screamer to describe this pedal. I just want to say that right off the bat. And that made me wonder if that is an experience that other players are having too, and maybe that's why there are a bunch of them used out there floating around, because players are looking at this as it's a tube screamer, and then they plug it in and kind of go, that doesn't sound like a tube screamer to me. Now, this is based off of a JFET op amp. It's very powerful. It has a lot of headroom, and it has 3 different modes on it. Now, the first mode is a symmetrical LED clipping. The middle is a wide open op amp, kind of like an edgy clean boost. Mode 3 is asymmetrical silicone diode clipping. Across all 3 modes, one of the things that I found is this has a pretty persistent edge to it. It has almost a rasp to it. Where I found it differentiated from a tube screamer is it doesn't really have, I think of a tube screamer as having the distinct mid hump and also having a smoothness to the clipping, that kind of bluesy thing. Now, not that tube screamers can't get edgy, because they certainly can, but this one had it had a wider open frequency range with a lot of clarity to it, but in a way that, again, I felt was very not tube screamer like, particularly where the decay, it almost had this undertone to the decay that reminded me of a fuzz. It had this very hint of that kind of splattery decay of the clipping kind of fizzling out, again, as an undertone, I want to say. Especially pervasive when you were listening to the lower mids was what I noticed.
And I think that because of that, I think that this is not really something that a lot of players who are into tube screamers, my guess would be, are going to be looking for. Now, there are loads of reviews that are positive for this online, so it could be one of those situations where people have tube screamers and they want something maybe captures a hint of the flavor. I think if I hadn't seen the word tube screamer used so much to describe this pedal, the most I might say, and just if I kind of went into it just like it's just an overdrive, there might be a couple of times where I'd say I almost got a hint of tube screamer there. That was about the extent of it. I actually thought in some ways it had similarities to the Boss SD1. Again, I almost felt like there were hints of fuzz with it, and it just, again, this sort of hint of raspiness, this edginess to it. There's a brightness to it that a tube screamer doesn't tend to have, and the whole character I just found very, very different. Now, I was not surprised at all after I looked at the literature to find out that the first mode in particular was LED mode, because it just had that. LED mode has that kind of, that snarl to it and everything. But what surprised me was that decay. It was almost like if you're going to a wine tasting, and they're telling you about all the kind of things, and then there's this like slight finish, right? There was that sort of like sputtery decay was this like very, very hint of a slight finish, like, oh, well, I've got notes of strawberry with a bit of an oaky finish. Actually, you're just drinking the water that we rinse our mouth out with. Of course, it was. The tone I found kind of a sweet spot. I did find it very bright. Again, according to the literature, it's supposed to have much more range on the tone. I found this pedal really bright and edgy, so I liked it best with it pushed back a little bit. And for the alternate clipping modes, starting off with it on mode 1, and then for the alternate clipping, you notice I leave the gain up, because I really want you to hear the character of the pedal as opposed to it just being used as a clean boost. Because, of course, there are a lot of ways you can dial this in. There are a lot of ways that you can, you can use it, and you can pair it with amplifiers that are already overdriven. I'm going into a clean amplifier, and again, for the alternate modes, they're keeping the gain up because I really want you to hear what the character of the pedal on its own merit is. And my thoughts on this would be, if you're looking at this pedal, don't go into it looking at it like it's a tube screamer. If anything, it's a contrarian tube screamer. I almost got a hint from the way it was written up, and what people were saying is it's almost like a Bizarro World tube screamer for people who don't like tube screamers. I don't know. It's kind of the sense that I got, but it just, character-wise, I found it very, very different. So if you're interested in this pedal, that would be my general thought, is go into it thinking about it on its own merits and not necessarily just kind of discard that whole it's a TS style overdrive. And I've played a lot of tube screamers lately. Lately I've been using both the Ibanez TS9 and 808, two different Maxon 808s, the Classic and the Apex, the One Control Persian Green Screamer, both the Keeley Red Dirts, the Red Dirt Standard and the Red Dirt Germanium. Also used the DCW Tradition, we've used the Vic Audio Green Screamer, just a load of tube screamer pedals. So I do have a strong familiarity, and also a very recent familiarity, with what to expect when you're playing a tube screamer. And again, I just found this one very, very different. Entirely an offshoot, and not really in the same realm as any of those, which are not all dedicated tube screamer reissues. Some of the alternate ones that I mentioned, they're not just clones by any means. So to feel like this one doesn't sound like any of those was something that really struck me based on what I was reading. Now, for this video, I'm plugging into a Franklyn Amps Tweed 5E3. You just heard it with this guitar. It's a Lust for Tone Holy Relic Lustcaster. Next, we're going to play it with a Gibson SG. Let us know in the comments what you think. Have you had a similar experience, or have you had a different experience? Please let us know if you had a totally different experience and you think this is right in the realm of a tube screamer and it's just a little bit different enough that you like it and thought it was a cool new flavor. Let us know what you think. Stick around for some more tones. I'm Jack Fossett. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I hope you enjoy the rest of the video.